Hello everybody, my name is Jesse Beach, Operations Manager of Future Ag. Today we wanted to go over the AF series combines, specifically the AF11, and give you guys an overview of all these new features, systems, functions on this new machine. So starting at the front of the machine, we have a new feeder house. This feeder house is the same width as our current production flagship machines, 250, 260s, all the way back to the 8010. Some changes on this newer feeder house, newer or updated pin latching system for the header. So there's two pins that push out instead of the old J hook like we're used to. This feeder house is now driven from the opposite side of the machine. It's still driven by a CVT like prior machines, but it's driven on the opposite side. So there's a prop shaft that comes down the right side of the machine. There's another shaft that comes through the bottom here to drive the left side for the header. There's a belt in behind these shields here that goes up to our top shaft to drive our feeder chain. Also here, we moved the feeder front stops from the inside of the feeder house to the outside to make them a little easier to adjust. And for people that have had feeder faceplate adjustment, they'll notice there's no cylinders or linkage up here on top of the feeder house anymore. The feeder actually pivots at the bottom. There's two cylinders that move the feeder in and out, and that gives us our faceplate adjustment. So same header hookups as prior machines, our electrical connector, our faster connection for the hydraulics. Underneath, always using the safety locks when you're underneath the header. A little bit different design from before. Header has to be all the way up in order to get them in. So we're coming in from the feeder from our header, and the new thing on this combine is what we call an SFS, Synchronized Feed Roll System. This synchronized feed roll is to replace what we had for a rock trap before. So it's an integrated feeding system for the rotors and also a rock trap system as well. So this SFS is driven off of, in this case on this AF11, the left-hand rotor. So it's matched to the rotor speed, and that's driven through this pulley system up here. That SFS is reversible at the same time as the rotor, so we retain the rotor reversing capability. In order to reverse that SFS, this belt has to be tensioned on the other side, otherwise you won't get the drive to drive it backwards. So right now we're tensioned in the feeding position. When we go to reverse the rotor, this pulley tensioner here will come down and this one will push on the belt, which will then tension the other side and reverse the system. So it's a little bit of a delay when you go to rotor reverse a machine because that belt has to shift directions. In the monitor, there's actually a procedure we call it for deslugging the rotor. That deslug procedure will do everything automatically. It will reverse the feeder route and then run the rotor and the SFS backwards to deslug the machine. So also over here, the rock trap has a hydraulic option now, so we can do the rock trap dump from the cab. That is an option, so you can go to back to the manual system as well. So this machine's equipped with 710, 70 R42 duals on the front and 750, 65 R26s on the back. Working around this left side of the machine. Up here we have our unloading drive system. So one of the big changes for the AF series combines is the elimination of any drive chains. Everything is driven by a belt. So up here we've got our cross auger drive for one of the cross augers. So the way the drive works is we've got this big 4-rib V-belt that comes into this bottom gearbox for the incline auger into the unload tube. Comes through that gearbox, drives our first cross auger. You'll notice there's a tensioner on this belt to engage that cross auger. Drives through that cross auger to the other side of the machine. There's another belt similar to this that you'll see when we go to that side that drives the front cross auger and has the same tensioning system as this side. That enables us to have a half rate unload, so we can shut off one cross auger to shut off half the rate of unload. The unload rate on this auger is 6 bushels per second. When we cut off one cross auger, we cut that in half. So belts only for drive. So this is an AF11, so this is a dual rotor machine. You can see the length of the rotor is quite long. We got 3 concaves at the front, or thrashing grates, and then our separating grates working back. Below the separating or the thrashing grates is our grain pan. So this combine is not equipped with a self-leveling shoe like we're used to on our flagship machines. So the shoe does not physically move with the terrain when you roll on a hill. What it's equipped with is a side shake system, or a cross flow as we call it. And what that does is it gives us the ability to shake the material uphill. So in a dual rotor, you have a natural even loading of the grain pan. In a single rotor, you always tend to overload the right side of the grain pan. With that side shake system, there's actually 2 pressure sensors on the back of the grain pan that are measuring the load coming off of the grain pan. And what that does is it gives the system the ability to put in a bias of a side shake on level ground to even out that grain pan as it enters the sieve. So it gives the ability for us to even out that loading on the sieve coming off the grain pan. Right here is our return system for instead of the tri-processor like we're used to with the 3 paddles inside. This has got a auger coming in on the bottom. There's a grate with fingers and a paddle inside, which will then take it up to this auger, paddle, and then it dumps it onto the front of the sieve. On this side, we've got our engine air cleaner and our pre-cleaner. Also down here, there's a vacuum fan for pulling that dirty material out of the pre-cleaner. We got a toolbox here and a step. Makes it nice and easy to get up into this area to service the air filter, check any of the belts, tensioners, and to get into to pull our separating grates or concaves as well. Working our way around the back here. So this machine is equipped with what we call a high hood mount chopper. There is an option for an integral chopper. This one does not have it. So in place, they put a traditional beater in to move the material off of the back of the rotor into the high hood mount chopper. This is a 2-speed chopper, 3,600 RPM in high range, 800 RPM in low range. It is electronically shifted from the cab, which is an option on these machines, and it also has the hydraulic counter knife adjustment from the cab, so we can adjust those counter knives to get the chop that we're looking for. That chopper then dumps down into the spreader system. So we got 2 big impellers. On these impellers, they're hydraulically driven, they're independent of each other, so the speed of each one can be driven separately. There's 2 radar sensors here on the back of the machine, an option on these machines. And what that's doing is it's measuring the spread width. So we can enter in whatever spread width we're looking for, 40, 45, 50, 60 feet, and enter that into the monitor, and it will actively adjust the spreader speeds of each side to equal out that spread that we're asking of it. So it will compensate for wind, other variables in the field that'll affect your spread. This whole spreader frame will come up out of the way. So on the back here, we've got a button panel. This button panel can do different things. We can turn on our sieve or work lights to get to light up the areas. This can also control the bypass door for dropping straw. We can control our sieves for calibration. We can shift our rotors to neutral, and we can also shift the chopper to neutral. In order to put them back into a gear, though, that has to be done in the cab if they're shifted to neutral. And then the other thing we can do here is lift this spreader frame up out of the way. So we'll lift that up out of the way to get a better view. There is safety locks here to lock this spreader frame in place when it's in the down position or up position. So with the spreader frame up out of the way, there's lots of room to get in. This pan for the chaff coming off the sieves can be lowered. To gain additional access to the sieves. Our trailer hitch can be rotated around and acts as a step to get into the back sieve area. In the back sieve area, you get a view of the beater coming over into the chopper on the other side of this panel here. Much larger sieve area than we've had in prior machines. While we're in the back of the machine here, our loss sensors for our rotor and our sieve. Up in front of the beater is our rotor loss sensor. So in a different position than flagship machines. On the flagship machine, there was one on either side of the back of the rotor. This is a true rotor loss measurement because it's actually what's coming off of the rotor into the beater. On the back here, we got two sieve loss sensors. These sieve loss sensors are measuring the sieve loss on either side of the sieve. That crossflow system I was talking about before is utilizes these sensors to get an accurate measurement of which way the material load is on the sieve. Also back here, there is pressure sensors on either side to measure the sieve load back at the back of the sieve here. So there's an upper set of pressure sensors and a lower set of pressure sensors to measure the bottom sieve. There is 4 sieves now instead of just the 3 that we're used to. So there's an upper pre-sieve, a lower pre-sieve, which is new, the upper main sieve, and the lower main sieve that we call it. So really easy to get out. There's 2 bolts with nuts here on either side. Loosen them off basically to nothing. There's underneath this panel, there's an electrical connector. The best way to see it is up there. There's an orange connector at the back of the upper pre-sieve. You disconnect that connector, the actuator and everything and the linkage stays with the sieve. Once those bolts are undone, there's 2 handles here and there's a couple tracks that the sieve will ride out and you can take them out of here. On the front, same setup. You just see these white posts that are sticking out of the frame. That's just to guide it over so that you're not dragging it across this upper sieve. Same procedure for the lower sieves once you get the upper sieves out. This machine has a much larger fan than the previous flagship machines. In my experience, usually you're running quite a bit slower on the fan because it moves so much air through this machine to effectively do the run the cleaning system. So as the air ducts, these aren't just for coverage or a shield or anything like that. There is an actual purpose behind it. So we'll lower the spreader frame down. While we're here, we'll open up the straw bypass door. It's already open actually. So this door, when you want to drop straw and bypass the chopper, so it comes off the beater through this door and down off this pan. These wings here can be used to adjust your swath width as it's coming off of the machine to get a taller, narrower swath, or to lay it out a little bit wider so it'll dry a little bit quicker. We can lower that door from the panel. So as we work around the right side of the machine, access to the engine bay is through this right-hand service door, and then pull the ladder down. Working around the right side of the machine, fuel tank, 396 gallons of fuel on board in one tank. The opposite side had the DEF tank. Over here, we've got the same toolbox step set up here. On this, you can see the right side. This is the actuator for that cross-flow system to do the side shake for the sieves. So this is the sieve assembly. There's another one up underneath the grain pan. Can be accessed. There's an access hole in the grain pan to get to that actuator in the center. Right here is affectionately being called the grain leg. It's the grain elevator. This machine has up to 10,000 bushel capacity on the elevator as an option. It's fed by two clean grain augers on the bottom. So the front one is actually spinning the opposite direction to push grain away from the fan housing, so we don't have the fan plugging issue that we had on flagship machines. And then the other one is fed directly into it. So there's another feed in this area for the elevator going up to the grain tank. So the only chain would be the elevator chain that's inside of here. It's driven by a belt right here with tensioner. And then this is our second cross auger drive with tensioner as well. So on the right side of the machine here, you can see the prop shaft just above the rotor doors that's going down to drive the feeder. On this side is our vacuum fan for our rotary screens, which we'll see when we go up into the engine bay. While we're on the right side of the machine, it gives you a good view of the gearbox for the SFS drive off of that left-hand rotor. In a single rotor machine, that box will be closer to the center of the machine with a longer shaft over to the left side. Okay, we'll go up to the engine bay. Okay, we'll get the shields opened up here in the engine bay. So one of the first things everybody notices is that the engine is at a different position than we're used to. It's also at a downward slope. The engine's at the same angle as the rotor or rotors. The idea in this machine is to create drive efficiencies within all the drive lines. So instead of having 90-degree gearboxes to do transitions, we try to keep them as straight as possible. So this big gearbox on the back here houses all our hydraulic pumps for the different systems. On the front of this gearbox, there's two CVT drives, similar to our flagship machines, just larger. So the right side here, there's a CVT for the feeder house, and then also just below here, below this exhaust, is the rotor CVT. The rotor CVT drives into the left-hand rotor gearbox, which then has an output shaft to the right side to drive the right rotor in a dual rotor machine. So the primary gearbox, like I said, houses all our hydraulic pumps and CVTs. There's also an auxiliary gearbox that drives all our auxiliary functions: chopper, unloading drive, beater, things like that. That gearbox is not spinning all the time. The only time it's engaged is when we're in harvesting mode. If we're not in harvesting mode, if we're rotating the machine, that gearbox is totally stationary. It's not, and the idea is to take some load off of the engine that is now just being used to propel the machine. Up here we've got our hydraulic tank, our def fill, our saddle for our unloading auger. And then working our way around here, we've got our fuel fill up on the right side here. And then we can see our cooling package with our three fans up at the front there. We've got our grain tank. This machine has got a 567 bushel grain tank. On the larger machines, or actually on all of the machines, it's an option to go to a smaller one, 450 bushels. On the AF9 machine, if you go to a 567 bushel grain tank, they limit the unloading rate to 4.5 bushels per second instead of the 6 bushel per second. On the AF11 and AF10, with the larger grain tank and just the more availability of horsepower, we can use 6 bushels per second. So there's multiple level sensors within this grain tank. We've got our quarter, half, 3/4, front full one, and rear full one. So the machine has the capability in the monitor now to count up from 0% all the way up to 100%. using the yield sensor and the level sensors in the tank. Our Vector Pro receiver. This machine is outfitted with 4 cameras. There's one in the grain tank, a backup camera, a unload tube camera, and there's also a camera at the trailer hitch for to make it a little easier to hook up to headers to tow them down the road. One note on the headers, with the FD2 MacDon head, you will need a longer pole hitch in order to clear this long unloading auger when it's folded up. Otherwise, contact with the spout and the reel may happen if that long pole isn't used. So the cooling package, you can see our rotary screens up the front here. This is the cleanest area to pull air from, so these screens stay relatively clean. This whole door can open up by pulling this pin, moving this latch, and we can access our entire cooling package. Once you're done, pull her down closed. We're latched closed now. Jumping into the cab here, a lot of similar controls. Feels very home compared to a flagship machine. Similar console, same multifunction handle. We have our dual Pro 1200 displays. Here, controls, radio, some other lights, mirrors up in the headliner here. Got our cool box up on the left here that's climate controlled with the air conditioning in the machine. Sun visors, all our storage around the back side of the machine, or back side of the cab. And then we also have our built-in fridge underneath the buddy seat here. Thank everybody for taking the time to watch this brief overview of this AF11. If you have any questions, feel free to contact Future Ag, any locations in Red Deer, Old, Stettler, Coronation, Mayerthorpe, or Stony Plain.